The views and opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Open Sky Radio. Please be advised.
Good day, everybody. Welcome to the fire you can't put out. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Now, I understand by the time this show comes out, Thanksgiving will be over for everybody. I wanted to tape the show yesterday, which would have been November 27th, 2013, but I lost my voice. And doing this kind of thing, obviously, without a voice, not the best thing. But hey, here I am with you on Turkey Day, and I want to thank you for joining me. Coming up in this episode, we are going to get into Obamacare, the latest. We are going to get into the Polluter Welfare Act, ending tax breaks potentially on preachers, what's been going on this holiday season with the huge employers like McDonald's and Walmart. But I want to start today with the nuclear option. This is monster mega news. Earlier this year, when the new Congress was being seated, myself, Kevin, and Angela, who were all co-hosting at the time here on TFYCPO, mentioned that when the Senate came back, Harry Reid should change the rules. Harry Reid had been hinting for some time that he was going to change the rules in the Senate. And then he had a meeting with Mitch McConnell, and when the new Senate reconvened, he got on the mic and he said, I talked with Mitch McConnell, and I believe that they are going to stop filibustering. The three of us, all co-hosting at the time, were absolutely beside ourselves furious. It wasn't just the fact that he wasn't changing the filibuster. It's fine. I understand why he's hesitant to change it, but he had hinted at it for so long. I suspect that what he was maybe looking for was for people, when he was hinting that he was going to change the filibuster rule in the Senate, maybe he was looking for people to say to him, hey, Harry Reid, we've got your back. Go ahead and do it. The filibuster is there for the purpose of protecting the minority in the government, in our Congress. It's part of our democratic process. It makes sense because if the entire country, or the people that turn out to vote, let's say they give the Senate to the Democrats, and it's, well, in this case, it's, say, 56 to 44, right? So the Democrats have a majority, but there's obviously quite a few people that voted for the Republicans. Now, this happened during the Bush administration, too, the previous president. And so it makes sense to still give the minority some power, even though they've clearly given the majority of power to this other party. It doesn't mean that the other party doesn't have a constituency and doesn't have people there that it's representing, because obviously it does. So the filibuster is there, so when a bill comes to the floor, and you and your party feel so strongly about it, then you can stand up and you can say, I filibuster. Now, when people think about the filibuster, they think about Mr. Smith goes to Washington. They think about that kind of thing, what they call the talking filibuster, which is what Wendy Davis did. It is also what Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders recently did. See, when Wendy Davis did it, there was an actual consequence to it because that's just how the government is run in Texas. When Ted Cruz did it, and when Bernie Sanders did it, that was really just political theater. What they were doing was they were standing up and speaking. It was very important to them and to their constituency, but there's really not a talking filibuster. What I would have liked to have seen is the talking filibuster come back so that people can see the absolute outright obstruction that's going on in the government. So, what finally changed Harry Reid's mind? Let me bring this to you. This comes from BuzzFeed, written by Nate Nocera and Chris Geidner. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid led the chamber with 52 Democrats voting to eliminate the 60-vote threshold needed to invoke cloture and avoid a filibuster, a threshold that Democrats said has kept too many of President Obama's nominees from coming up for confirmation. Patrick Leahy, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, was presiding over the Senate and announced the ruling of the chair that following the vote, a simple majority vote is sufficient for all nominations other than those of the Supreme Court. Of course, Mitch McConnell immediately freaked out. He responded by accusing Reid and the Senate Democrats of creating a fake fight over judicial nominations in order to distract from the problems with the rollout of the healthcare law. And by the way, anything that Democrats do of any consequence right now, it's called a distraction. So these appointees to the federal courts, I forget what the exact numbers are, so we'll just say for numbers' sake, there are in the United States 390 federal judges that were picked by Republican presidents and 390 federal judges that were picked by Democratic presidents. Right now, the federal judge split is exactly even. Honestly, dead set down the middle. So President Obama has been nominating people to those chairs or to those benches. And by the way, he is president. That's one of the things that he actually does. When people scream about the president not doing something about gas prices, he can't do anything about gas prices. Federal judges, yeah, he gets to nominate people to that bench, but they get to be voted on by the Senate. 3 equal branches of government. That's the way it works. So the president would put somebody up, and then they would be immediately filibustered if there weren't 60 votes for their confirmation to end cloture. So what would happen is a lot of them would just sit around for a long time. Some of them would wind up withdrawing their name from consideration for these nominations. Some of them would be confirmed after 18 months of waiting around. But here's the thing. When they were confirmed, they would generally be confirmed 91-0, 95-0. The entire Senate voting for them. So why were the Republicans filibustering them in the first place? Let me give you some perspective. Of all the times that the filibuster has been used, okay, all over the entire existence of the United States government, okay, let's just pick a nice round number of 1,000, okay. Let's say the filibuster has been used 1,000 times in the last 230 plus years, okay. 500 of those times were under this president. Were under President Obama. Just in the last 5 years. Half of all the filibusters that have ever happened under Obama's watch. And it was the Republicans every single time. So now this is only a partial nuclear option. Okay, this only includes people that will go on federal benches, nationwide federal benches, and then of course people that Obama wants in his cabinet. This doesn't cover the Supreme Court. This doesn't cover bills. The Republicans can still filibuster to their heart's desire any other bills. But with this is a closed issue, okay? So Senator Reid tweeted after he changed the filibuster rule, I'm old enough to remember when Senator McConnell insisted upon an up or down vote for judicial nominations. Back when he was the Senate whip in 2005, Mitch McConnell helped lead the Senate Republican effort to change the filibuster rules. I remember that. The Republicans during the Bush administration were screaming, look, Democrats, we know you don't like them, but just give us an up or down vote, right? So here's a quote from Mitch McConnell. By filibustering 10 qualified judicial nominees in only 16 months, our Democratic colleagues have broken this unwritten rule. This is not the first time a minority of senators has upset a Senate tradition or practice, and the current Senate majority intends to do what the majority in the Senate has often done. Use its constitutional authority under Article 1, Section 5 to reform the Senate procedure by a majority vote. That was Mitch McConnell, 2005, telling Mitch McConnell, 2013, that he's full of it. Immediately after the Democrats made the rule change, the president stepped up in support. Quote, All too often, we've seen a single senator or handful of senators choose to abuse arcane procedural tactics to unilaterally block bipartisan compromises or to prevent well-qualified patriotic Americans from filling crucial positions of public service in our system of government. So I support the step a majority of senators took today to change the way Washington is doing business. One of a president's constitutional responsibilities is to nominate Americans to positions within the executive and judicial branches. Over the 6 decades before I took office, only 20 presidential nominees to executive position have had to overcome filibusters. In just under 5 years since I took office, nearly 30 have been treated that way. All major stories this year, the Republicans are screaming revenge right now. They're going to get the power back in 2014, and you Democrats are going to rue the day. We'll see about that. So here's another monster-sized thing that happened, and it happened without waging a war. Anyone remember during the 2008 election when McCain was on the campaign trail and somebody asked about Iran, and he made fun of that Beach Boys song? He goes, bomb, 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 Iran. And it was hilarious, right? Murder is always hilarious with these fellas. And then, of course, during last year, the presidential election last year, Romney was saying the same thing. We need to go after Iran. So all these Republican presidents just wanted to get in there, wanted to start a war with Iran. Okay, Iran is a problem. I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm saying that there's another way. Well, it turns out that the president and Secretary of State John Kerry have found the way. After months of previously secret high-level meetings between the U.S. and Iranian officials and years of international diplomacy, global powers reached a significant interim agreement with Iran regarding its nuclear program. Think Progress gives us the details. According to the terms of the deal, Iran has agreed to open itself up to more and greater sanctions from the International Atomic Energy, while halting the installation of any further centrifuges used to enrich uranium. Tehran's stockpile of uranium enriched to 20% will be diluted, and construction at the heavy water reactor in Arak will be halted. Progress at Arak, which will be able to produce plutonium when fully operational, was a key concern left unresolved at the last round of talks. In exchange, according to the White House fact sheet on the interim deal, the so-called P5+1, the United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, China, and Russia will provide limited, temporary, targeted, reversible relief from sanctions to Iran. Embargoes against Iranian oil, banking institutions, and other financial sanctions will remain in place during the 6-month period that the deal covers. Polling shows that Americans overwhelmingly support this agreement. Senate Republican Whip John Cornyn from Texas went on to make the bizarre and utterly ridiculous suggestion that the years in the making high-profile international diplomatic effort was just a plot to distract from the botched rollout of healthcare.gov. There it is again. So it goes like this. We have said we will start lifting sanctions. This is a 6-month deal. This is step 1, but this is going to get better. And what's nice is that we're not starting another war. With Iraq, obviously we've ended things in Iraq. We still have a few soldiers there, but we've essentially ended things. In Afghanistan, but see, that war went on for 10 years, and that's too long. In Afghanistan, that war has gone on for, I think, 12 or 13 years now. 12 years. And what's being talked about right now is staying in Afghanistan for another 10 years. See, and this is the problem with occupations, staying in a zone, starting a war, an unnecessary war, without a clear objective, and then just staying. But I think I have an idea why there's a push to stay in Afghanistan, and it has nothing to do with terrorism, it has nothing to do with security. TAPI, that is the TAPI pipeline. Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. It's a pipeline that will run through those 4 countries, ending up in India. And what's happening with the A in TAPI, TAPI, is they're protecting the shipping lanes for the oil right now, for that pipeline to be built. See, it's always money. There's always money somewhere down the line. And in Afghanistan, and I really hope that that's not the agreement they come to, but with Afghanistan, I think that's the real reason why we're going to stay there another 10 years, potentially. And then, of course, circling back to Iran, it's nice. It's nice that we're not getting into another war. I want to say congratulations to President Obama, who is having a tough time right now because the healthcare.gov, although it's getting better and although more people are getting set up, it's still not fully operational. And obviously, congratulations to Secretary of State John Kerry. Who knew, right? But there's a clear difference between Democrats and Republicans. As much as people like to say that they are two heads of the same ungodly monster, there's a clear difference. And Democrats try to find a way around war. Republicans, for all their pro-life screaming at the top of their lungs, don't. And so people are taking notice of that. This comes to us from Paul Blumenthal over at HuffPo. House Democrats' chief political arm maintained a record-breaking fundraising pace in October, adding $7 million to its existing $25 million cash hoard as campaigning for next year's election intensifies, according to a Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee aide. The DCCC has raised more money at this point than in any prior election cycle, even when adjusting for inflation. The committee has raised $65.2 million through the end of October. October's fundraising success included the 16-day government shutdown that began October 1st after House Republicans decided to shut it down over Obamacare. The committee's fundraising in September also surged as grassroots Democratic anger grew in the days preceding the shutdown. The DCC has raised money from more than 1.3 million donors in 2013. Most gave small amounts, under $200, at a record pace recently. Through September, the committee had raised $23 million from small donors, most of it online. So it gives me hope for the House. Hold on to the Senate in 2014. Get back the House. I understand that they've gerrymandered a lot of those districts, but they're taking Republicans that can win right now, this moderate Republicans, or Republicans that are just a little to the right, and they're replacing them in primaries with Tea Partiers. And Tea Partiers are losing their elections. So I want to say this. Hey, we should have more Tea Partiers primarying Republicans. Mitch McConnell is facing a primary right now because they think that he's not anti-Obama enough. All right, so there's been a lot of George W. Bush on the TV machine as of late. Earlier this year, or late last year, he began releasing paintings that he had been doing. After he left the presidency, he took painting lessons, and those started making their way around online. And then recently, he's been on more talk shows and making more appearances. Recently, he gave a speech at a Jews for Jesus convention, which he caught a lot of heat for. So why is the president out there so much? I caught the ex-president, George W. Bush, on Leno. And I noticed during one point in the interview, Leno said, "Hey, Mr. Bush, we've been asking you to come here for years. Why have you decided to come here now?" And of course, Bush just played it off like it was nothing. Oh, da-da-da-da-da. So what's really happening? Bush was interviewed recently, and he said, how do we grow the private sector? Once that's the goal, an issue like the Keystone Pipeline becomes a no-brainer. If private sector growth is the goal and the Keystone Pipeline creates 20,000 new jobs, build the dang thing, we'll say. Let's talk about that pipeline for just a second. It will create, at most, 3,900 temporary jobs and 39 full-time jobs, 39 permanent jobs, okay? So the president is talking a lot more as well. Why? Why now? Why all of a sudden? Statute of limitations. The statute of limitations to charge Bush and Cheney are running out as of January 20th, 2014, exactly 5 years after Bush left office. Just one of the laws Bush and his team violated is 18 U.S. Code Section 371, conspiracy to defraud the United States, that was used successfully to prosecute Nixon and Reagan officials in the Watergate and Iran-Contra scandals, respectively. Bush conspired and lied to the United States about the Iraq War. Bush categorically claimed that America's invasion was aimed at persons or nations that planned or aided the 9/11 terror attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the failed attempt that crashed a plane in a field in Pennsylvania. Bush and Cheney are also criminally culpable for waterboarding and other forms of torture. And the good news is that there is no statute of limitation on torture. Bush and Cheney may be prosecuted as long as they live. Previously, Attorney General Eric Holder exonerated CIA agents involved in torture because there at the Bush administration Justice Department memos regarding the alleged legality of torture. The memos do not apply to Bush and Cheney because they produced the memos directing CIA operatives to torture detainees. So it's coming up, and it's running out pretty quick. I reported a couple of shows ago about the fact that Eric Holder did this. In August, the Justice Department requested immunity for the war criminals as a result of a lawsuit filed by an Iraqi single mother alleging Bush and much of his administration should be tried for violating international law by executing the illegal Iraq war. So the Obama administration has already gone to bat for Bush and his cronies. And that stops any other country from convicting him and imprisoning him. Of course, he has been tried and convicted in absentia in plenty of countries. But get this, you're going to see a lot more of Bush because the statute of limitations is running out, and he's going to get back into the American consciousness. And after the Obama administration is all done in 2017, you're going to see the two of them playing golf together. Ladies and gentlemen, this is politics. So I want to get into equality for this week. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin announced earlier this month that the state-owned National Guard facilities will no longer allow any married couples to apply for spousal benefits regardless of whether they are same-sex or opposite sex. And she says, Oklahoma's law is clear. The state of Oklahoma does not recognize same-sex marriages, nor does it confer marriage benefits to same-sex couples. The decision reached today allows the National Guard to obey Oklahoma law without violating federal laws or policies. So she says, I don't want to give same-sex couples benefits, but she's not allowed to discriminate per the Pentagon. So she said, guess what? Nobody gets benefits. In various states, Catholic charities have also abandoned all adoption services so as to avoid providing them to same-sex couples. Schools have also tried to block gay-straight alliances from forming in places like Texas. Oklahoma, however, is not alone in defying Hagel's orders. Hagel's the head of the Pentagon. Mississippi, Louisiana, and Georgia have also done the same. I've been crowing quite a bit lately about how great I think it is that so many states are providing equality, marriage equality now. And what I'm not thinking about, obviously, is we're going through the states that have not banned gay marriage yet. Right now, there are 29 states that have constitutional amendments banning same-sex marriage. So, as great as it is, that it seems like so many states are getting on board. And at the rate marriage equality is being approved state after state, it seems like we're gonna go through all 50 states eventually. We're not. We're at 17 right now, I believe, 16 or 17. Couple more states, and that's going to be it, because those red states are going to put up a mega fight. Because the deeply religious believe that it is their government. And as much as they say they want small government, they want the government to fit into your bedroom and into your family. Where do they not want the government? They don't want the government collecting taxes or regulating industry. That's the real thing. We don't live in a theocracy, though. And I don't know why anybody thinks that we do. And with respect to being Christian, my friend Chris told me a while ago. I met him back in 2004, so we've been friends for about 10 years now, pretty close to 10 years. And I remember hearing that he was a Christian. I identified as nothing, and he identified as a Christian. I thought that was interesting. And I said, Chris, what makes you a Christian? He said, because I strive to be Christ-like. That blew my mind, because I remember learning about Christ. Because I went to church when I was younger, quite a bit. I went to church, almost up until I was, pretty much up until I was graduated from high school, I went to church. And I had always identified as one who believed in God. Of course, I no longer do now. But I remember learning the ideas that Christ had. Clothe the naked, feed the hungry, house the homeless. But today's Christians, at least the high-profile ones, don't seem to subscribe to that same idea. Everest W., now I'll say his full name, Everest Wilhelmsen, the administrator of the Facebook group Christian American Patriots Militia, wrote this status on his page. Quote, "We now have the authority to shoot Obama, i.e. to kill him. His will, violations, and alienation of our Constitution, constant disregard for our peaceful protests, and corruption of all three branches of government, i.e. rogue and illegitimate government, reveal that the dictator that he is." Peaceful protest. This must be the ones with the guns. Back to the article. Obama and his co-conspirators disrespect our Constitution, constitutional rule of law, and abuse the American people. The authority to kill Obama comes from the Second Amendment of our Constitution. Hold on. Second Amendment doesn't give you the right to kill. But he goes on like this. And it's clearly laid out in 18 U.S. Code, Section 871, that it is illegal to make any threats against the president or the vice president. But he clearly did this, and then he ends it with, please join us at our Facebook page, Christian Patriots Militia, in all caps. And he sees himself as a revolutionary, and he sees himself as a Christian, and Obama is waging war on. And one more thing, all three branches of government, he heads one. President Obama heads one. I'm highlighting this one right now, obviously. This one threat against the president. But no president has gotten more threats than this one has. And quite a few people have been jailed on it. And I don't want you to forget that. Because there's no need for this. Anti-Obama revolution fizzles out after only 100 people attend. Oh my goodness, I love this story. In October, Larry Klayman called upon millions of Americans to march on Washington, D.C. The goal? To remove usurper President Obama from office. November 19th, 2013 is the date that Larry Klayman picked for his revolution. Did the millions he forecast descend upon the city arrive in planes, trains, and automobiles? Are the Obamas hastily packing and preparing to sneak out of the White House under a cover of darkness? No. Larry Klayman's revolution was not quite what he predicted it would be. Right-Wing Watch estimates that no more than 100 people attended the event. Who is Larry Klayman? He is the lawyer and founder of the groups Freedom Watch and Judicial Watch. He's also a columnist at WorldNet Daily. In 2012, he claimed that the president had been indicted by a citizens jury. Seems to be of little concern to Klayman that his citizens grand jury was not approved by the courts and is therefore a total sham. The right-wing site BizPac proclaims over 40 groups converge on the White House to reclaim America, and the mainstream media ignores it. Over 40 groups, huh? This comes to us from Wes Williams over at addictinginfo.org, and he says, a few years ago I stood on the steps of the Capitol and watched a similar-sized group protesting infant circumcision. The media didn't cover that one either. It's not a lot of people. Another site sympathetic to claimant, freedomoutpost.com, offers a list of 32 speakers who were scheduled for the event. Larry Klayman originally said that the intent was to stay in Washington until the president resigns or is forced from power by the military. Those plans may have changed following the turnout in the high two figures. If Klayman and his group still plan on camping out until the president leaves office, they're going to be settled in for the long haul, because that's not going to occur until January 20th, 2017. The heroes to the conservative movement, and they pick such strange heroes. Zimmerman's back in the news. So they're trying to paint him as a hero. And it's getting really hard as of late because he's been in the news for domestic violence a lot lately. This comes to us from Hunter over at Daily Kos. In an attempt to outdo Sean Hannity's effort to turn George Zimmerman into a hero, WorldNet Daily's Jack Cashill is now writing a book that paints the killer as a conservative idol. Cue the patriotic music. Cashill blames 2 recent allegations of domestic abuse, including claims of violence from Zimmerman's estranged wife and girlfriend, on the media. It never happened, right? It's the media. If I Had a Son, that's the name of the book, by the way, tells how for the first time in the history of American jurisprudence, a state government, the U.S. Department of Justice, the White House, the major media, the entertainment industry, and the vestiges of the civil rights movement conspired to put an innocent man in prison for the rest of his life. He said he killed Trayvon Martin. It was clear that he killed Trayvon Martin, but he got away with murder. He's not an innocent man, but he's still a hero to the right. So we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Sandy Hook, which means it's almost time to vomit, because the NRA and their ilk are going to be raising their guns up and celebrating the tragedy. And now there's a game out. The game, titled The Slaying of Sandy Hook Elementary School, allows players to follow shooter Adam Lanza's path through Newtown, Connecticut on the day of December 14th, 2012, shooting and firing his weapon on students and teachers. This is a video game. Obviously, families of the victims are outraged. In an audio message in the game's credits, Jake Lamborn, who said he created the game, said, "Here we are nearly a year after the Sandy Hook shootings, in which 26 people were killed and absolutely nothing positive has come out of it. Players are encouraged in the game's credit to contact their state governor and representatives and to keep up the speed with gun legislation." Here's the thing. Your video game depicting the murder of children and teachers, that's not going to change anything. Legislation from our reaching through to our tone-deaf legislators. That's what's going to change. Getting weapons of war out of the hands of people, especially the mentally ill, that's going to change. Your video game is despicable. Let's get into Obamacare. The biggest downside of the ACA is the reliance on the private insurance industry. This comes to us from OccupyDemocrats.com, written by Salvatore Aversa. So, back to Vermont. We mentioned this in previous shows, but this is really rolling along. Vermont, home of Bernie Sanders and the first state to pass marriage equality, will now implement single payer. Follow me, please. The ACA provided states with federal funds to institute Medicaid expansion. The states chose to expand the program, were also able to set up their own exchanges, which were relatively free from the problems the federal site had. Vermont decided to take it a step further by setting up their very own single-payer system. The slogan of the program? Everybody in, nobody out. The program will be fully operational by 2017 and will be funded through Medicare, Medicaid, federal money for the ACA given to Vermont, and a slight increase in taxes. In exchange, listen up, there will be no more premiums, deductibles, co-pays, hospital bills, or anything else aimed at making insurance companies a profit. Further, all hospitals and healthcare providers will now be nonprofit. To make sure that it's done right the first time, Vermont has brought in a specialist, Dr. William Haseo, who has set up the single-payer system in 7 countries. Think about that. No more premiums, deductibles, co-pays, or hospital bills. You're sick, you go in, you get out, that's it. No more going bankrupt. You know what else this is going to do? This is going to take the employer section out of your health care. right? When you want to start a business, you no longer have to write the cost of healthcare into the cost of doing business. And if you want to be entrepreneurial, you don't have to stay at a job you don't like just to keep the insurance. This is going to do huge things for what you like to call capitalist America. But quite honestly, insurance is written into everything. The cost of insurance is written into everything. And it's going to go state by state by state. Vermont's going to be the first state to do it, and it's great because they're a relatively small state. But once they do it, it's going to spread. It's going to go to all the blue states. And I live in a couple of blue states. And I'm pretty excited about it. They can fight the ACA, but it's not going away. So in Kentucky, despite the efforts of Kentucky's congressional delegation to stymie the implementation of the ACA, uninsured residents in one of the state's poorer counties were pleasantly surprised to find out that they can enroll in the state's insurance plans. Now, Kentucky has a Democratic governor, so they've decided to implement Connect. They've decided to put Obamacare into their state. In one transaction, the health clinic worker told Ronald Hudson, a previously uninsured father of 5 who makes $14,000 a year before taxes, that he qualified for a medical card. Quote, "Well, thank God," Hudson responded laughing, according to the Post. "I believe I'm going to be a Democrat." Here's another exchange the Post highlighted in which a 52-year-old disabled electrician being sued for unpaid medical bills secured coverage. Quote, "You smoke?" Lively asked, going through a few routine questions, right or left-handed. He quipped quickly as he typed. "All right," Lively said after a while. "You're covered." "I'm covered," Fletcher said, and he slapped the table and he clapped twice. "Woohoo! Can I go to the doctor now? No, I'm serious. I need to go." The success of those transactions are contributed to Connect's smooth launch, Governor Steve Beshear's decision to expand Medicaid in the state. And the Obamacare numbers are climbing. I'm covering this because this is historic. This is history, and it's happening on our watch. And there's not a lot of people paying attention to it right now. Or if they are, they're flipping on their TV, and even the evening news is saying, everything's going terrible, terrible. Because you know what? That's the stuff that gets people to their television screens. But you know what? It's not going as bad as they say that it's going. Lives are being saved. Money is being saved. An honest, to goodness, new day in America. The administration announced that it will extend the deadline for new enrollments from December 15th to December 23rd. That's for policies effective as of January 1st through enrollment, which will be open through March. Enrollments have doubled since the end of October from 106,000 to more than 200,000. That figure, of course, comes from the 14 states that have decided to set up their own exchanges. State officials say that they are seeing an uptick in signups this month. California has had about 80,000 signups. They're reporting 2,000 signups a day. Washington State is seeing huge increases from 55,000 enrolled at the end of October to 98,000 in the first 2 weeks of November. Connecticut reports that 14% of its projected enrollments are complete. Jack Zients, the tech guy, brought in to oversee the fixes for healthcare.gov, announced that the capacity of the site will double by the end of the month to up to 50,000 users at a time. So they say, well, dang it, the Obamacare, Obama should have to have Obamacare, and the Senate and the House, they should all have to have Obamacare. If we have to have Obamacare, they have to have Obamacare too. Duh. Yeah. And they do. They're not telling you that they do, but they do. Of course, they're railing against Obamacare, but guess what? They have Obamacare, because Obamacare is exchanges. It's a healthcare market. And John Boehner recently signed up for Obamacare. It may have taken him a few hours, but Speaker of the House John Boehner has enrolled for health insurance through the Washington, D.C. Exchange website on Thursday. Boehner, who led the Republican opposition to the ACA in the House, but is required by federal health law to enroll in the exchanges, chronicled his sign-up on his blog. Like many Americans, my experience was pretty frustrating, he wrote. Providing screenshots of error messages, the website has been widely criticized, of course, for being user-unfriendly. But after a few hours, Boehner noted, keep at it, and called the DC Health Helpline. They called back a few hours later, and after restarting the process on the website 2 more times, he says, I just heard from DC Link that I have been successfully enrolled. Boehner's press secretary, Brendan Buck, tweeted, keep at it, and Boehner's enrolled. Sure didn't take long after the blog post, he said. But they're not going to give up. So the memo distributed to the House Republicans this week was concise and blunt, listing talking points and marching orders. Quote, because of Obamacare, I lost my insurance. Obamacare increases healthcare costs. The exchanges may not be secure, putting health information at risk, and continue collecting constituent stories. The document, part of a product of series of closed-door strategy sessions that began in mid-October, is part of an increasingly organized Republican attack on the ACA. This comes to us from the New York Times, which apparently has become the lucky recipient of leaks galore from the House Republican operatives eager to convince skeptics that it does in fact have an effective and viable political strategy. So they've got a political strategy to kill the ACA, but they don't have something to put in place of it. Good job, guys. Let's get to the virus. Destroy Obamacare. Okay. The ACA website has been subject to a handful of hacking attempts, including at least one intended to bring the site down. Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Robert Stempley told lawmakers on November 13th. Now, so they go to interview the techie guys for this article, and this comes to us from ABC News, and they say 16 attacks. Gosh, that really doesn't sound like much. And they say, well, it's probably only the 16 most egregious attacks. So who has heard of Destroy Obamacare? I know that a lot of conservatives are screaming that at the top of their lungs, but do you know what it actually is? InformationWeek.com has an article, Hackers Threaten Destruction of Obamacare website, which reports Destroy Obamacare. That's the not-so-subtle name of a homegrown distributed denial-of-service attack tool that's being advertised for download on some social networks, which promises to overwhelm the healthcare.gov website. It goes like this. And you can go on to just about any right-wing website right now and download it. Just you'll see it on the right or the left, wherever they put their ads. And you download the Destroy Obamacare program to your computer. Okay, and then it runs in the background. And then it dings the ACA site, healthcare.gov, once a minute, every minute, 24 hours a day. And they're hoping that enough conservatives who want Obamacare to fail will download this, put it on their computer, and then it will attack the ACA website all day long. Not a solution, okay? And they're not being shy about it. You go to any right-wing website, or just about any right-wing website, and it's right there. Download this to your computer. Help us bring down healthcare reform. Real Christian, guys. Real Christian. Let's get to some good news. On Thursday, Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont and Keith Ellison from Minnesota introduced legislation that would eliminate tax subsidies for the oil, gas, and coal industries. The bill, called the End Polluter Welfare Act, would save taxpayers $100 billion over the next 10 years. Specifically, it would remove tax breaks, close loopholes, and end taxpayer-funded fossil fuel research, and prevent companies from escaping liability for spills or deducting cleanup costs. Right now, oil companies pay damn near nothing. Excuse my language. They pay almost nothing. And they get all these tax breaks for what they do. So when people are screaming about welfare recipients and fixing bridges and teachers getting paid, look, we would still be able to do those things, and we would still be able to lower your taxes if it weren't for the welfare queens in the oil, gas, and coal industry. We'll pay attention to this bill. This bill goes after the five of the biggest, especially ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, BP, and ConocoPhillips, who have made more than $1 trillion in profits over the last 10 years. So they made over $1 trillion in profits over the last 10 years. So guess what, guys? You can afford to pay your taxes, or you can go do business elsewhere. A federal court has declared a tax exemption for preachers unconstitutional. This was mega interesting to me. In the court's opinion, Judge Barbara Crabb of the Western District of Wisconsin wrote that 26 U.S. Code Section 107 violates the Establishment Clause because the exemption provides a benefit to religious persons and no one else, even though doing so is not necessary to alleviate a special burden on religious exercise. Within the 43-page decision, the court cited that the tax exemption cost taxpayers billions. At least $2.3 billion has been stashed away by supposed men of God over a 5-year period between 2002 and 2007 alone. According to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, FFRF, the organization that brought the suit, the tax exemption allowed ministers of the gospel to exclude a housing allowance from their income. Dig that. They get a tax break, okay, and then you're paying for their home. They're not collecting money and feeding the poor, as Jesus would want. They're collecting money, not paying money, because they're a religious organization, and they're just stacking up wealth. I believe the original reason why we had this was to keep churches out of politics. And that sounds like a good idea. Keep them out of politics. But guess what? They're getting a tax break, and they're actually in politics. But I found this. The exemption initially was sponsored by Congressman Peter Mack, who urged pastors be compensated by the U.S. government for carrying on such a courageous fight against this godless and anti-religious world movement. You would think that with words like that, they would come out of the mouth of a Republican, but oddly enough, Mack was a Democrat. The ruling on tax exemptions is a major victory, but just a small step toward eliminating the billions of dollars that churches still receive. I'm okay with them getting a tax break if they stay out of politics. And they've not stayed out of politics. So it's time to pay taxes, guys. All right, let's get into it. My favorite person in the whole world right now, seemingly, would be the new Pope. He was out making Republican heads explode again this week. Pope Francis released an apostolic exhortation, which amounts to an official platform for his papacy and the Roman Catholic Church. Pope Francis has attacked unfettered capitalism as a new tyranny. We'll get into that in just a minute, but here's the thing. What he's saying right now is what, as I've described earlier, what Jesus would say. Okay? He's doing the Lord's work, and it is tearing the Republican Party apart. Okay? So he described unfettered capitalism as the new tyranny, urging global leaders to fight poverty and a growing inequality in the first major work he has authored alone as a pontiff. In it, Francis went further than previous comments criticizing the global economic system, attacking the idolatry of money and beseeching politicians to guarantee all citizens dignified work, education, and health care. He called on rich people to share their wealth, just as the commandment "Thou shalt not kill" sets a clear limit in order to safeguard the value of human life. Today, we also have to say "Thou shalt not" to an economy of exclusion and inequality. Such an economy kills. How can it be that it is not a news item when an elderly homeless person dies of exposure, but it is news when the stock market loses 2 points? The pontiff calls for an overhaul of the financial system and warns that unequal distribution of wealth inevitably leads to violence. As long as the problems of the poor are not radically resolved by rejecting the absolute autonomy of markets and financial speculation, and by attacking the structural causes of inequality, no solution will be found for the world's problems, or, for that matter, to any problems. I beg the Lord to grant us more politicians who are generally disturbed by the state of society, the people, and the lives of the poor. He also said that trickle-down economics is not working. Let the heads begin exploding. Catholic in name only. Another area in which conservatives are fighting amongst themselves that has nothing to do with the Republican Party. From the New York Times recently comes news that conservative American Catholics aren't so sure about Pope Francis. Some Catholics in the church conservative wing in the United States say Francis has left them feeling abandoned and deeply unsettled. Breaking away from the article here, really? You mean like the poor people that you make feel that way? Back to the article. I think we start at the beginning. In September, Francis gave an interview to an Italian Jesuit magazine in which he said, "We cannot insist only on issues related to abortion, gay marriage, and the use of contraceptive methods. The teaching of the church is clear, and I am the son of the church. But it is not necessary to talk about these issues all the time." He says, I understand those issues are important, but they're all the Catholic Church is talking about, and they're not addressing the poor. A majority of weekly mass goers actually support same-sex marriage, and that's a pretty amazing finding. A poll released by Quinnipiac University found that 2 in 3 agreed with Francis that the church was too obsessed with a few issues: abortion, gay marriage, and contraception. Steve Skojek, the vice president of a real estate firm in Virginia and blogger who has written for several conservative Catholic websites, wrote of Francis's statements, "Are they explicitly heretical? No. Are they dangerously close? Absolutely. What kind of Christian tells an atheist that he has no intention to convert him? That alone should disturb Catholics everywhere. I'm not saying Pope Francis is terrible, but there is no divine protection that keeps him from being the type of guy who with subtlety undermines the teachings of the church to bring about a different vision," unquote. Some conservative Catholics are sharing prophecies online that foretell of tribulations for the church. In one, an Irish woman predicted that Benedict would be held hostage. Yiggity, yiggity, yikes. This is going to get more and more interesting as it goes on. Because inside the Republican Party, they have to decide what they're going to do with the theocracy that they want. Are they going to continue to follow Ayn Rand, who is an atheist, which doesn't make her a bad thing, but when you're Paul Ryan and you're saying that people need Jesus and not food stamps, I think you should explain that a little bit better, because they're all following Ayn Rand. They're telling people that they're on their own. Tax breaks for billionaires, nothing for you, the working families. Paul Ryan has spent more than a year furiously distancing himself from the wreckage of the 2012 Republican campaign. The next step in Ryan's rebranding is in a Washington Post story outlining his plans to launch himself into an anti-poverty policy. Okay, the article asserts, unlike Romney, Ryan is no child of privilege. But Ryan was born into one of the most prominent families in Janesville and has received a share of 2 family trust funds. Ryan believes the main impediment facing poor people is the existence of government programs to give them money and health care. Paul Ryan wants people to dream again, and you don't dream when you've got food stamps. The other emerging element of Ryan's anti-poverty agenda is Jesus. Quote, "You cure poverty eye to eye, soul to soul," he said last week in a Heritage Forum. "Spiritual redemption. That's what saves the people. Don't feed them. They need Jesus." It's going to be fun to see how this all shakes out. With the elections coming up, with so many Catholics following the Pope, over 1 billion people in the Catholic Church. I'm not a religious man, but I'm so happy with the new Pope, and I love watching what's going on right now. So I want to get into this. Obviously, we are in the holiday season right now. And Walmart and McDonald's have made it to the front pages quite a bit. Well, certainly not the front page of major newspapers, but they made it to the front page of a lot of online sites. What some people would call the secondary news, but what I would call very, very important. McDonald's McResourceline, a dedicated website run by the world's largest fast food chain to provide its 1.8 million employees with financial and health-related tips, offers a full page of advice for digging out from holiday debt. That's helpful. Among their helpful holiday tips, sell some of your unwanted possessions on eBay or Craigslist, and that could bring in some quick cash. Elsewhere on the site, McDonald's encourages its employees to break apart food when they eat meals, as breaking food into pieces often results in eating less and still feeling full. And if they are struggling to stock their shelves with food in the first place, the company offers assistance for workers applying for food stamps. 4 months ago, the company partnered with Visa to distribute a sample budget. In it, the chain didn't take into account expenses like heating bills and factored in a monthly rent of $600 to workers living in New York City. McDonald's cashiers and team members earn on average $7.75 per hour. Their website has another piece of advice for people who are stressed about their meager paychecks. Quit complaining, the site suggests. Stress hormone levels rise by 15% after 10 minutes of complaining. Digging out of holiday debt, which was a section on their webpage, now redirects to an error message. Some of the content has been reviewed and changes were made where appropriate. McDonald's spokesperson Linda McComb told Think Progress, and we'll continue to do that periodically. McDonald's makes billions with a B. Their executives make millions and have tens of millions more in stock options. They can afford to pay it, but what's their solution? Sell your stuff. Break your food into small pieces. Eat slower. Stop complaining. A University of Connecticut survey conducted in November found that 90% of polled Americans don't plan to shop on Thanksgiving Day. About half consumers, 49%, disapprove of the retailers that will open early, and another 46% prefer that stores wait to open until Black Friday morning. Shoppers have also fueled their anger through online petitions that target specific stores. On the platform Change.org, there are more than 200,000 total signatures for 61 petitions asking stores to save Thanksgiving. According to Change.org, communication manager Cherise Ebola, more petitions this year target niche businesses like Staples, Medieval Times, in addition to the big box retailers Target and Walmart. Mall owner Simon Property Group has come under scrutiny for its own Feeding Black Thursday. Simon defended extending mall hours to Think Progress by citing customers' need for greater flexibility. Store needs more employees and is often the last consideration for large corporations. Workers may receive a turkey dinner or extra pay. As stores risk consumer backlash, there's very little evidence that extending Thanksgiving hours will boost holiday sales. A Deloitte survey found that fewer people plan to shop stores Thanksgiving this year. Only 13% they would shop Thanksgiving 2013 compared to 23% in 2012. There was a story about a gentleman in Elkhart, Indiana named Mike Rohr who works for Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut is a part of Yum Brands. And he said he was told that this year they're going to open on Thanksgiving. And he refused. He said absolutely not. They wouldn't outright fire him, but they asked him to resign. And then when he refused to resign, they told him to resign. This brings me to my final thought. For sale. Your family time. These holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving, they're generally the only guaranteed time off that we get. And for me, although I do not like the initial origin of Thanksgiving, of course our country has a very bloody history with how Anglo-Saxons came to get this country, but Thanksgiving to me is a holiday for families. And that is how I will spend mine. Christmas, as much as many try to say that it is a religious holiday, and of course the Keep Christ in Christmas people are going to be speaking up here very soon, that once again for me is just another family holiday. And in these times when we spend so much time working, I myself have one job that pays and quite a few that do not, but every one of them is as equally important to me. During these times when we all seem too busy, when we all seem to be working too much, it's nice to have a spot on the calendar that tells us, stop, slow down, look around, because you're going to miss it. I myself am raising 3 daughters along with my beautiful wife, and if I don't stop and look around, they're going to be grown up and gone before I know it. It's nice that there are these days on the calendar that make me stop and look around and be thankful for what I got and to spend time with my family. But increasingly, these companies that are paying meager wages to people have said, you know what? We want you to work on Thanksgiving. We want you to work on Christmas. Black Thursday, they call it. There is no Black Thursday. It's called Thanksgiving. And everybody should get it off. Now, I understand there will be some exceptions. Police have to work. Firefighters will be on call. In Oregon, where you're not allowed to pump your own gas, obviously, those gas attendants have to be working. There are a few exceptions. But Pizza Hut, I don't think there's a huge demand for pizza on Thanksgiving. Now, Mike Rohr is still unemployed. And it is likely that he is going to be offered his job because a lot of people have jumped on to the Yum Brands website or Facebook page and have complained and said that they are never going to eat at the restaurant again. What's happening, though, is these companies that are mega rich and would not be there without us working for them have said that they are going to stay home with their families. And they're going to collect a big fat paycheck. And you're going to give up your time with your family, and you're going to go in and you're going to collect your meager paycheck. They're not paying more. And there's a reason why. And I've said this before, and I will say this again. They want the working class to remain impoverished so that they remain politically impotent. I'm hoping that the huge backlash this year on employers that are telling people that you're going to work on these holidays that you would normally get off, I hope the huge backlash this year makes them think about it next year. We've seen over the years Christmas shopping season moving back further and further and further. And so this year it actually landed on Thanksgiving. Tonight, Thursday, October 28th, Walmart is going to open. Walmart workers will be turning out. They'll probably show up after having Thanksgiving dinner, and then they'll be selling tons of cheap crap to people who don't need it. And it's despicable. And it doesn't need to be this way. You have a need to make money, and that's fine. I understand that. American capitalism and all the rest. But we have a need to be healthy. We have a need to be happy. And it is not okay for you to take time, our time, away from us when we should be with our families, just so you can have another buck to throw on the pile. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining me for episode 45 of The Fire You Can't Put Out. We are the fire that you can't put out, and we will prevail. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And I hope it was a good one for you. I will catch you next week. Good day.